Hey, good morning, everyone. Let's stand up. We're going to sing a song together. We taught you last week. It's about the greatness of our God. Come on. Let's sing this out together. Come on. Come, let us worship our King. Come, let us bow at his feet. He has done great things. Yeah. See what our Savior has done. See how his love overcomes. He has done great things. He has done great things. Oh, oh, hero of heaven, you conquer the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. Come on. He's a faithful God, come on. And faithful through every storm. You'll be faithful forevermore. You have done great things. Yes, you have. And I know that you'll do it again. For your promise is yes and amen. You will do great things. Oh God, you do great things. Oh, 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 hero of heaven, you conquer the grave. You free every captive and break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. All right, come on, sing it out. Hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. Great things. Come on. Hallelujah, God, above it all. Hallelujah, God, unshakable. Hallelujah, you have done great things. You've done great things. Oh, hero of heaven, you, come on. Captive, break every chain. Oh God, you have done great things. We dance in your freedom, awake and alive. Oh Jesus, our Savior, your name lifted high. Oh God, you have done great things. You have done great things. Oh God, you do great things. God, you do great things. Man, it's so good to see you guys this morning. My name's Paul. I'm one of the pastors here on staff. We're so grateful that you guys are here, especially if you're new around here. We'd love to meet you, shake your hand, answer any questions that you might have. And so after service, be sure to stop by the hub. It's just outside in the lobby. We'd love to meet you before you take off today. Well, hey, in a few weeks, we're going to be celebrating something pretty big, aren't we? Few weeks, we've got Easter coming up, man. We are so excited about it. We're going to do a big service of baptism, celebrating the new life in Jesus. We'd love to have you guys here. We're going to have services on Saturday and Sunday. But more than just picking out what day that you're coming to, we'd love for you guys to start thinking about who you're bringing to experience the love of Jesus that we know, the Jesus that's for everyone, the Jesus that gave his life to give new life to us. And so we'd love for you guys to start thinking about who it is that you're bringing here in just a few weeks. We've got a great service planned for you guys today. We're going to sing some more songs. And a little bit, Ben Reed, our adults ministries pastor, he's going to come out with a message on David. But before we go any further, turn to somebody around you, say hello. We're going to get going here in just a second.
The cross is my beginning, the line drawn in the sand, the end of all my striving, and where I am born again. There Jesus was forsaken, so I will never be. His grace is my salvation, the gift of God, the work of Calvary. It is done, it is finished. Christ has won, he is risen, grace is here. Love has triumphed over death forever, yeah. The cross needs no addition, no. His mercy is complete, his love is not in question. The Son of God has spoken over me. It is done, it is finished. Christ has won, he is risen, grace is here. Love has triumphed over death forever. Strongholds bowing to the Savior, resurrection power over every circumstance. His word stands final and forever. It will not be shaken. He alone has won it all. Strongholds bowing to the Savior, love has triumphed over death forever.
death, no life or final breath could ever separate us from your love. No failure, no mistake, no loneliness or pain could ever separate us from your love. Could ever separate us from your love. On the other side of everything I'm afraid of, you're standing with your arms wide open, wide open. Even in my deepest doubts and wonder, you're standing with your arms wide open, wide open. I'm here, made strong. Oh, I found where I belong. Forever I'm alive now in your love. I'm changed, unchanged by your amazing grace. Forever I'm alive now in your love. On the other side of everything I'm afraid of, you're standing with your arms wide open, wide open. Even in my deepest doubts and wounds, you're standing with your arms wide open, wide open. Arms wide open. If I make my bed in darkness, if I try my best to hide, oh, you know the farthest ocean, you give the morning its light. I can't run from your presence, oh, there's no place that far. So I run to you, my Savior. Oh, there's safety in your arms. If I make my bed in darkness, if I try my best to hide, you know the farthest ocean, you give the morning its light. I can't run from your presence, oh, there's no place that far. So I run to you, my Savior. Oh, there's safety in your arms. Yeah. There's safety in your arms. Whoa. On the other side of everything I'm afraid of, you're standing with your arms wide open, wide open. Even in my deepest doubts and wonder, you're standing with your arms wide open, wide open. On the other side of everything I'm afraid of, you're standing with your arms wide open, wide open. Even in my deepest doubts and wonder, you're standing with your arms wide open. Wow, how great is our God. Won't you sing with me? How great, come on, is our God. And all will see how great, how great is our God. Do you believe that this morning? Come on, sing that out. How great is our God. Won't you sing with me? How great is our God. And all will see how great, how great is our God. and He is worthy, worthy of all praise. And my heart will sing, my heart will sing, how great is our God. Yeah. How great is our God. Won't you sing with me? How great is our God. And oh, we'll see how great is our God. How great is our God. Come on. Sing with me. How great is our God. That is the truth. We believe it. We believe that you do great things in our life. God, through your Son, you said all things are finished. All of our shame, our guilt, the stain of sin, our chains broken. You welcome us with arms open wide. Your children are welcome. It's through your greatness, God, we have new life. And we celebrate that this morning. We celebrate you. We celebrate Jesus. We celebrate this new life that we have in you, God. And we love you and we praise you and we do all of these things. We sing your name because of how great you are this morning. We love you and praise you. And it's in your name I pray. Amen. It's been great to worship with you all this morning. You all can have a seat. We're going to continue to worship this morning by receiving an offering. And so I'm going to invite our volunteers up as we give of our tithes and offerings.
Good morning. Welcome back from spring break. For so many of you, I know it's great to go on spring break, but for us and our family, it's good to be back on routine and a schedule. And I know many of you traveled and you're back, and so it's good to see your faces again. We had a great spring break. We took our kids to Universal Studios in Hollywood. They had a blast. They had such a great time. But it's one of those things where if you're a parent, you know this, or maybe, growing up as a kid, maybe the things that you remember most aren't these like big epic things that your family planned for you and the things that they spent the most money on. It was often just the cheap, almost throwaway things that you remember. That's what it is for my kids. So one of the things that we love to do as a family is every night we go around the table and we say, hey, what was your sweet for the day and what was your sour for the day? And it just starts up conversations that are really good and life-giving. Well, at the end of our spring break, we just threw the question out to our kids, hey, what was the best thing about our trip to California? What'd you love most? And, in my mind, I'm going, okay, was it Harry Potter World, or was it this ride, or was it that ride? Because these rides are epic. And both my 10-year-old and my 5-year-old said, it was the bed and breakfast, which, just so you know, was like old and dirty and run down. The food was not great. That was the sour for my wife and I. That was the sweet for our kids. Isn't it true that our kids often remember the things that we feel like are just throwaway moments? We had one of those moments not too long ago. Our kids were kind of getting stir crazy in the house, and so we filled up a 5-gallon bucket and put it out on the front porch and gave our kids water guns and just said, go have fun. And they played for hours. They had so much fun. Now, but I want to show you the picture, because in that moment I'm going, oh gosh, this is one of those moments that we need to remember. We need to capture. I need to be able to look back on this in the hard moments and be reminded that parenting is worth it, right? Because my kids are having such a good time. So I open the front door and I tell my kids, hang on just a second, why don't you smile? I want to take a picture so we can remember this. And before I show that though, just keep in mind that my 5-year-old daughter she's just a little slower than her 10-year-old brother. She needs to look for every little opportunity to seize. Like her little insignificant moments, she needs to capitalize on those. So when I said, hey, why don't you smile for this picture? Here's the picture that I snagged. So you can see Rex he's having fun. He's like, yes, I get to smile for a picture. But why don't you zoom in on Gracie's face over here? This right here is pure evil and pure joy all rolled into one. And there could not be a greater summation of my little daughter right here. She saw a little window of opportunity and she pounced on it. And she was so proud of herself because she finally got a little sneak shot in on her brother. We have decisions in front of us every single day, opportunities in front of us. Some of those are big and some of those are small. Some of those seem to have big, huge, life-altering implications, and others of those just seem like they're pretty insignificant. A lot of us operate on this theology of an open door versus a closed door. You may have heard that. If you haven't heard that, here's what that is. That says, gosh, if there's a door that's open in front of me, God must have opened it, and so I'm gonna walk through it. And if there's a door that's closed in front of me, that must mean that God has closed that door, and I need to wait. I need to hold off and wait on God. But as we look back across our lives, isn't it true that has actually kind of gotten us into some trouble before? That's been kind of dangerous when we've operated on that principle, because sometimes we walk through an open door only to realize that there's a cliff on the other side. Or we've looked at a closed door and said, gosh, if I'm being honest, I wish that I would have walked through that door, or I wish that I would have used the handle on the door that God put on there. And if I had used that, maybe I would have accepted that job, because I regret that I didn't. Or maybe you shouldn't have taken the job that you took. Maybe it's a relationship, and it's a relationship that as you look back, you're going, I wish I hadn't taken that one. I wish I hadn't stepped into that. Or I wish I hadn't stopped that relationship. Some of those, again, are huge life-altering decisions, but we face these types of decisions every day. And so the question I want us to wrestle with is this: how do I make the right decision? It's not a matter of do you have opportunities and choices and difficult things in front of you. It's how do I make the right decision? We're in the series on David, and we've been looking through different aspects of David's life and the different events that make him who he is. as one of the greatest heroes of our faith. And what we're gonna see today is that David had a pretty incredible opportunity in front of him. And if any of us look at it on the surface, we would say, why would you not say that God has opened this door? David had a foolproof opportunity in front of him, and we're gonna see how David responded to that. So if you've missed the last few weeks, or if you don't know much about the life of David, let me kind of catch you up and get you up to speed before we jump into our story today. So at roughly the age of 15, David was anointed as king of Israel. The problem was, he found himself in kind of this lame duck period. You know, the period here in America where we say it's between November and January when the next president has been elected, but the current president hasn't vacated his office yet. It's just a few month period. Problem for David is that this wasn't just a few months. This was gonna be another 15 years for David before he would actually be able to take the throne that was rightfully his. And the big problem is when he was anointed as king, nobody told Saul that God's favor had left him and now rested on David. So for the next 7 years, he's gonna be on the run for his life. What happens is David defeats Goliath. You've probably heard that story a few weeks ago. Joel walked us through that. David rises in popularity though when he defeats Goliath. And by the age of 22, he becomes the most popular person in all of Israel. A nation of about 5 million people. David, a 22-year-old, is the most popular person. Bible in 1 Samuel tells us that women came out of all the cities of Israel, and they were singing and they were dancing in the streets, and they would come up to King Saul and they would sing this. They would sing, Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands. You can only imagine for the king that's not gonna really sit well with him, right? So let's see how Saul responds. Saul was very angry. And from that time on, Saul kept a close eye on David. As David's popularity grows, Saul's jealousy grows. So what David's gonna find is that he's gonna have to be on the run for his life. And so just 2 verses later, we see what Saul's jealousy does, and it drives him to throw not 1, not 2, but 3 spears on 3 different occasions at David's head. I mean, you think you have problems with your boss. Can you imagine if your boss is throwing spears at your head? None of those hit though. So Saul comes up with this plan that in the middle of the night, he's gonna go slaughter David. Well, David's wife catches wind of this, and David sneaks away in the middle of the night, and David goes on the run. For the next 7 years of his life, David is gonna be chased by Saul. He goes from place to place. You can read this in 1 Samuel. He goes from Naioth to Nob to Gath to the cave of Adullam to Mizpah to Moab to the forest of Hereth to Keilah to Ziph to Maon and then to the wilderness of En-gedi. He's not even done here, but this just leads us up to our story today. And at all of these places, Saul's trying to kill him. So this is where our story picks up in the wilderness of En-gedi. Let's read this, 1 Samuel 24. It says, after Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, because Saul finally took a little short break from trying to kill David, he goes and defeats the Philistines, and then he comes back to trying to kill David. He was told David is in the desert of En-gedi. So Saul took 3,000 able young men from all Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crag of the wild goats. So this is more than just a kind of an innocent, I'm frustrated with David. He's kind of making me angry. I mean, Saul takes 3,000 of his choicest soldiers to go hunt after David. David has an army of about 600 guys, and he's on the run, and Saul takes 3,000 men to come chase after him. And then he says this. It says, he came to the sheep pens along the way. A cave was there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. You're gonna see in a moment just why I think this was pretty crappy timing for Saul. See what I did there? It'll dawn on you later. It's okay, just hang with me. Saul all by himself. He gets away from his men, he gets away from his army, and he goes into a cave to go use the restroom. Seems pretty insignificant. But then it says this, he closes out the verse with this, David and his men were far back in the cave. See, David and his men were on the run. His 600 men had found a cave to hide out in so that they could be away from Saul and not get killed. Saul comes into the front of the cave, helpless, vulnerable, to use the restroom, and David and his men are sitting in the back of the cave going, you know they're elbowing each other going, did you see who just walked in? Of all the caves that David and his men could have chosen, of all the caves that Saul could have chosen, why this one? Why this time? Why this opportunity of all caves in all of history? Why would Saul walk into this one? See, in front of David is the wicked king who represents the one thing between David and the God-appointed throne that is going to be in David's future. The one thing that stands in the way of him being king. And here's the crazy thing. Saul doesn't even know that David's there. He has no idea that David and his men are in the cave. I mean, are you seeing this incredible opportunity that David has? So did David's men. This is what they told David. The men, David's men said, this is the day that the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. See, even David's friends are seeing this and they're telling him, we don't know, did they make that prophecy up or was it actual prophecy? It really doesn't matter. David and his men saw an opportunity, not just for David, but for themselves. They get to, if David was the king, they're not just this ragtag group of men who are following around David. They're now suddenly the king's army. And they're saying, your enemy is helpless. This guy that's been trying to kill us, you get to kill him. Their advice sounded pretty good, didn't it? Pretty logical. As you look at it on the surface, this seems to be a perfect opportunity in front of David. David had already been anointed king. He knew the one thing that he could do to speed this process up just a little bit and not be on the run for his life. He had what we would call maybe an open door. So let's see what David did. Then David crept up unnoticed. Do you feel the tension? It's dark. It's quiet. David's men are behind him whispering and they're saying, go, take out Saul. God has obviously opened this door for you. Step into it. Take Saul out. So let's see what David did. David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. What? Like, this is David's moment. David's the future king. He's already like a hero for his people. Just a couple chapters earlier, he killed Goliath. How much easier would this be? And yet, David cuts off a corner? It seems like a letdown, doesn't it? It seems like David's being weak. That David really should have taken what was rightfully his. This is a weak move. But if we'll step back just a little bit and think about David in this situation, we might begin to say, wait a second. Oh, yeah, David, that's really great. Like, well, you didn't commit murder. Yeah, I guess maybe that's better. Maybe it's better that you cut a corner off the side of the robe and didn't commit murder. He didn't do the worst he could do, did he? He could have killed Saul, but he didn't. Instead, he just cuts off a corner of Saul's robe. Now, I think the significance of this is probably kind of lost on us because we're a few thousand years removed from David and Saul. What David was signifying is two things. One, he was telling Saul and he was telling his men and he was telling himself, this is my robe. Because the robe it represented Saul's rulership, Saul's kingship. It represented that Saul was the one in control. And so David was saying, I can take this at any point that I want. This is mine, it's rightfully mine. What he was also showing was that he was loyal to the king. He was saying, okay, Saul, I could have killed you, but I didn't. I could have taken you out, but I'm loyal to you, the king, so I'm just gonna cut just a corner off the side of your robe. You know, in our lives, when we think sin, we typically think the big things. And so we go through the checklist of, okay, I haven't killed anybody today. I haven't robbed a bank. I haven't hurt a child. So, okay, I'm good. My conscience is clean. I'm in the clear because I haven't done anything like that. So really, I mean, what David did, he didn't kill somebody. He just cut a little corner, right? And we're tempted to cut corners too. And my wife asks me, what'd you have for lunch? And I tell her a salad, which is true. She didn't tell her that it was just a piece of lettuce and a tomato on top of a hamburger. That was my salad. Or maybe you're tempted to cut the corner when your spouse asks you, how many drinks did you have last night? And you say, I had 2. You didn't tell her that you had 2 after that as well. See, it's not that you're outright lying. You're just cutting a corner. Or maybe for some of you, it's tax season, and you're tempted to cut a corner there and fudge a little bit on your income or fudge a little bit more on, I can write this extra thing off even though it doesn't really count. But, the government doesn't really need my money anyway, right? I mean, we cut a corner. And we cut a corner, and then we cut a corner all around us. Maybe you've been given the opportunity to actually kill your enemy, but I would guess that you haven't been like David was. Your enemy didn't come into the front of a cave while you were sitting in the back. But isn't it true that we often find our own little ways to seek revenge? We exercise a little bit of road rage, or we send them a nasty email, or we publicly shame them. See, I think the problem is when we're faced with opportunities, when we're faced with decisions, when we're faced with choices, the question that we often ask ourselves is this: can I? Can I do this? Can I make them pay? Can I do this financially? Can I do this relationally? Can I find the time? Can I find the energy? Or maybe we ask, can I get away with it? Can I do this and nobody else would realize it? Sometimes the answer is, I don't know if I can. Or we say, probably not, but I still want to do it. And so we follow up the question with these words: can I justify this? And maybe those actual words don't come out of your mouth, but we do this all the time. See, we use the end to justify the means. Our end being financial freedom, or happiness, or joy, or something for our kids, or more money, or more free time. And so we say, that's what we're aiming for, so anything that I could do to get there is justifiable. The problem is the ends don't justify the means. In fact, the opposite is often true. Our ends don't justify our means. Sometimes our means end up justifying or vilifying our ends. You've probably heard recently in the news the college admission scandal that just broke. The U.S. Department of Justice has indicted 50 people for illicitly gaining admission for their own kids to get into school. Some people paid money to help their kids cheat on exams. Other people have paid money to just get them accepted to school. The scheme has been going on since 2011, 8 years, and more than 700 people are involved. There's a $500 billion class action lawsuit that's being brought against the families. Now, I don't know the outcome of these. I don't know who's guilty and who's not. But as we look at it on the surface, these parents have cut corners. Not with the evilest intentions. Their intentions are probably very similar to ours. We want our kids to have the greatest possible education. We want our kids to have a leg up on what we had. We want our kids to succeed and do well in life and have incredible opportunities in front of them. And so they asked the question, well, can I do this? And they found a way. They answered yes, and so they did. See, David justified his means by his end as well. The end that he wanted was to be king. And the crazy thing is that David even had God on his side in a certain way. That's how his men spun it to him. David was going to be anointed king. Just wasn't this time. For many of the questions and opportunities we have in life, the answer to can I is often yes. But just because we can doesn't mean we should. And so the next question, and I think the harder and the deeper question that we should ask is this: should I? Just because we can doesn't mean we should. And so we need to ask ourselves this question, because we can justify just about anything. Can I buy this house? Can I buy this car? Well, I was approved for the loan, so yes, I can buy it. But the better question is, should I? Can I go on this vacation? Can I date him? Can I date her? Yes, you're an adult, but should I? That's a better question. But if we're being honest, sometimes we even answer, I don't know, to the should I question. We reach decisions and we're going, okay, I can, but I don't want to stop with I can. I want to move to should I, and I still don't know. Here's the truth. It's easy to trust God when we have nothing to trust him with and nothing to trust him for. It's much harder to trust God when the things that we value start to slip away. It's easier to ask the question, can I? When our values start to get further and further from us, it's easier to say, well, can I do this? Because it helps me get closer to something that I value. But sometimes when we still don't have the answer, we can get clarity through this question. Do I have to cut a corner to get it? Can I? Should I? Do I have to cut a corner? Because if you have to cut a corner, then the answer is no. See, God's ways seem least appealing when we're most afraid or when we've been mistreated. God's ways seem least appealing when we're most afraid or when we've been mistreated, when we're afraid of losing our finances, when we're afraid of losing that deal, when we're afraid for our kids, when we're afraid for their future, or we're afraid for our future. God's ways seem less appealing, or when we've been mistreated. Just like David. David had been mistreated. And so the full honoring of God didn't seem quite as appealing in the moment when he's in the cave. We feel the need in those moments to take the timing of God into our own hands. So, can I take this vacation? Yes. Should I? Or will I have to cut corners? Will I have to dip into my retirement in order to do this? Will I have to go into further debt? Will I have to fudge on my taxes? Will I have to cut corners there? Will I have to not claim all of my income or claim a bigger deduction because we think the government doesn't need our money? What corners will I have to cut in order to get this? Can I date them? Can I date him or her? That's an easy question to answer. The harder question is, should I? Because we want love and we're created to give love and to receive it. A lot of times though, when we're faced with this question, we cut corners in order to try to get the thing that we know we were created to give and to receive. Can I have an affair? Well, everybody in this room would say absolutely not. But should I go to lunch with her? We justify it by saying things like, well, I deserve happiness. So I'm gonna look at this. I'm gonna message her. I'm gonna talk with him. See, nobody starts their marriage off thinking, okay, in 2 years, I'm gonna commit an affair. Nobody does. It's just through subtle cutting of corners that over time, find ourselves in a place that we're not proud of. Can I move in with her? Well, you can, you're an adult. But should I or should I trust God's timing and God's plan? Can I take this job? Can I take this promotion? Can I do this thing to keep the business afloat? Because this business is, this is providing the resources for tons of families. Can I? Yes, you probably can. Should I? Not if you have to cut a corner to get there. You say, I deserve this raise. This company's worth fighting for. But here's the truth that I want us to wrestle with today. When you cut corners, we cut out God. When we cut corners in our life, we cut out God because we don't have to trust God. It's our timing and our resources and our wisdom and our willpower. We don't have to trust God at all when we take matters into our own hands. But isn't it true that we know deep down that it isn't right? Or maybe we don't know it, but there's always, think about David's 600 men. Isn't there always that one person that everybody else is telling you, yes, take the job. Yes, go on the date. Yes, buy that house. But there's always one person that's going, maybe not. Maybe this isn't God's plan. David cut a corner. David was going to be the king. God had commanded him, though, to not lay a finger on Saul. But it was David's pride, a desire to speed up the process, and he thought he knew better than God, and he thought he could get away with it. He didn't trust. Cutting corners, no matter how small, cuts out God's best. But here's the hope for so many of us, because as we look back across our lives, we realize we've not just cut corners, we've taken the whole robe. We've not just cut a little bit out. We've gone in deep. Here's the hope for us. We don't call David a great king. We don't call David a great man because he was without sin. We call David great because of his response when he did. Let's read this. This is right after the incident where he cut the robe. After where David was conscience stricken for having cut off a corner of his robe. He was cut to his heart. He said to his men, The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord." With these words, David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went his way. It sounds like David took the high road, but the problem was that he violated a clear command of God. Here's the command. You may not know this, but David and his men and Saul absolutely would have known this command from the book of Psalm, chapter 105. It says this: "Do not touch my anointed ones." It was very clear. This would have been a command that was given sometime around the time of Joseph, hundreds of years earlier. See, what David did was he took the timing of God into his own hands. And when he cut the corner of the robe off, he touched the Lord's anointed. He knew exactly what he did. Took the timing of God into his own hands. And the throne was his, it just wasn't his yet. What he displayed was a lack of trust in God's timing. Realizing you cut corners all over the place is maybe where some of you find yourselves. And as you hear about David, you realize you've cut corners relationally and financially and professionally. Rarely with the evilest of intentions. You weren't doing it maliciously. It's just corner after corner have been cut. Here's the scary part. You can cut a corner and get away with it. And then your heart is lulled into thinking that that was okay. And so then you cut a corner again and you get away with it. And you start this cycle where you're tempted to do it again and again and again. I want to share with you a story from a friend of mine. His name's Jason. He goes here, and I asked him if he could share this before I did, and he said yes. Jason was a part of a startup, and he was working his tail off, but found himself cutting corner after corner. Let me read this. "I remember good intentions early on. I felt like I was a part of a team that was gonna crush it. We had great ideas and tons of abilities. My ego felt right at home. I wanted to be a big player in something from the ground up. I had just gotten married and we just had our first son. I wanted to show everyone that my success up to this point wasn't a fluke. I had a point to prove. Not only that, I was going to do it for my wife and our new son. They deserve the world. I felt convinced if I set out to do right by them, I could do no wrong." If you hear the excuses starting to build, the justification starting to build. Early on, some of the corners I cut, I justified with thoughts like, I've got to take risks, or it's for the greater good of my family. This is not really a big deal. As things digressed, I remembered coming to my attention some things that just weren't right. It was a shortcut here, a compromise there. My bosses would reassure me and feed my justifications and help me carry on. I looked the other way and rationalized my involvement by telling myself that it wasn't up to me, that I just worked here. These decisions aren't mine to make. I know they're wrong, but what am I supposed to do? I'm in too deep, but I can't quit. I don't give up. This is gonna get better. I just need to grind it out. And he says, but it's funny. As I look back on these thoughts, these were just conversations I was having to myself, only myself. It's no surprise that I found myself lonely in a bitter cycle of self-pity, shame, and guilt. And now where cutting corners ends up leaving us. You've been there. You felt that. I came to one day. I was in deep. I knew what I had to do. I had to get out and get out fast. This was wrong and it won't get better. So the next chance I got, I was out the door. Immediately I was relieved. The crushing pressure was lifted. I felt free. You've been there too, maybe. You cut corner after cut corner after cut corner. Then finally you decide, I'm gonna repent. I'm gonna turn back to God. And you feel the weight lifted. Maybe the opportunity in front of you isn't just an opportunity. Maybe it's a test that God's using to prepare you for what's next. To see who you're following. Maybe, just maybe, David wasn't quite ready for the throne. He had been anointed, but he wasn't ready yet. Maybe he wasn't ready to be king. Luke 16:10, Jesus tells us that if you can be trusted with little, you can be trusted with much. If you cannot be trusted with little, you cannot be trusted with much. So I throw to you, what if the decision in front of you is just a test for you? So David repents of cutting the corner. And then 2 chapters later, he's given another opportunity, another test. And it's almost the exact same test that he had before. Let me set the scene for you. So a couple chapters later, David and Abishai, that's David's right-hand man, they see Saul and his army camped down in the valley. And so Saul takes Abishai, they walk down to the valley. It's in the middle of the night. They see Saul's tent and they walk in. And Abishai says, this is your opportunity. Didn't God foretell that he's gonna give your enemy into your hands? Doesn't this sound just like the other cave that David was in? David has the exact same test in front of him, but this is how David responds to Abishai. As surely as the Lord lives, he said, the Lord himself will strike him, that's Saul. So the Lord will strike Saul, or his time will come and he'll die, or he will go into battle and perish. But the Lord forbid that I should lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. Now get the spear and water jug that are near his head and let's go. See, David responded remarkably different this next time when he was given a test. He was given a test and he passed this time. You don't know what hangs in the balance for you when you choose to trust and not cut corners. Here's what hung in the balance for David. David could have killed Saul earlier in the cave. David could have killed Saul in the middle of the night right here, but he didn't. And then in 1 Samuel 31, we see both Saul and Jonathan die in battle. Now here's the crazy part. If David had killed Saul, there would have been a long line of people that were ready to slaughter David because they would say, the throne is not rightfully yours. You know, the really hard part for David is that if he had killed Saul, the actual next person in line for the throne, as far as the Israelites were concerned, would have been Saul's son, Jonathan, who was David's best friend. So if David had killed Saul, he would have then had to turn around and kill Jonathan, which would have created another long line of enemies in David's camp. But because he trusted God's plan prevailed. Because he trusted God's timing and didn't cut another corner, God's plan prevailed. You don't know what hangs in the balance with your test. Cutting corners always costs you something. Let me finish Jason's story. Jason, you saw cut corners time and time again. Jason wishes that he could have been here, but he wasn't able to be here. I wish that I could have gotten Jason's story over a cup of coffee or on the phone, but I got Jason's story by email because that's the only way I can communicate with Jason, because Jason is in federal prison right now. He says, after I got out of the company, a group of federal agents showed up at my home to arrest me. I was convicted of being part of a large conspiracy to defraud consumers in a work-at-home scam. It's not like I woke up one morning and decided to become a part of a criminal enterprise. It was years of selling off my morals, bit by bit, until I could barely recognize the man I'd become. Over time, I cut corners until I couldn't recognize the lines anymore. Things I never thought I'd do, I did. Now I sit in federal prison, but it's through this that I see God working in my life now more than ever. Struggling to get sober through my trial and finally having to turn myself in for sentencing was exactly what I needed. I now have a relationship with Christ, a constant connection with him. I seek every day to understand enough of what his will is and try to muster the courage to carry that out. Just a couple weeks before Jason was sentenced and before he went off to prison, I sat down with Jason and his wife, and we prayed and we talked and we cried and we asked that God would somehow, some way use this to fuel Jason's faith and to fuel the faith of those around him. 2 weeks ago, as I'm corresponding with Jason, I was able to coach Jason to preach his first sermon ever in prison. So for those of you who are sitting going, I've cut so many corners and I'm in so deep, I don't know what to do. Repent, turn to Jesus, and he's gonna give you more opportunities. He's gonna give you other chances. And so my question for you is, as you look at your life, as you look at the decisions that are in front of you, what are you tempted to do? In what ways are you tempted to be subtly dishonest? Is it with your kids? Is it maybe Maybe at Disneyland where you're tempted to say, well, no, we really do live in Southern California so we can get the cheaper rate on our tickets. Maybe I'm the only one that's tempted with that. Maybe you're tempted with your boss. Maybe you're tempted with your employees, with your spouse. You don't know what hangs in the balance when you cut corners. My question for you is this a story you want to tell? Maybe you get the girl. Maybe you get the house. Maybe you get the job and the promotion. But years down the road, do you want to tell the story that says, I got what I wanted, but here are the corners that I had to cut to get there? No matter how far you've run, though, no matter how far from Jesus you are, repentance is only one decision away. God can use you. You can be a man or a woman after God's own heart. But you have the choice in front of you. Can I? Should I? Do I have to cut a corner? So whatever decision, whatever choice, whatever opportunity is in front of you right now in this season, go through the questions and ask yourself, do I have to cut a corner? And if the answer is yes, then run from that. You'll be thankful you did. Would you pray with me? God, I pray for every person in this room and for the myriad of decisions that they have in front of them. Some incredibly hard. God, I pray that as they face those, they would not stop with the question, can I? But they would be bothered and they would ask a better question, which is, should I? And God, if there's corners that are in front of them to cut, may they run from them. May they find you satisfying. And God, we pray that you'd honor them for that. Just like you honored David, and just like you've honored Jason in his life. God, we pray that as they step to make decisions that honor you, they would find freedom and hope in you. I pray this in Christ's name, amen. Thank you for being with us for week 4 of David. We're gonna continue it next week, and then in just a few weeks, we have Easter. So begin praying this week about who you're gonna invite, who you're gonna bring with you to hear the life-changing power of the gospel, maybe for the first time. It's been great to be with you. We'll see you next week.